viewers, and welcome back to the South Main Auto Channel. There's our 2012 Chevrolet Malibu 2.4 money lights on. Gone ahead, I hooked up our Tech 2. We do have two codes in it. Now the customer was aware of this. He bought this car at the auction. We have this P0016 stored in there. Okay, now that's for intake cam crank correlation, and then we have a 17 also, a P0017 for exhaust cam crank correlation. Customer was aware of this, bought the car at the auction. Apparently the light was on when he got it. If you clear the codes, he tells me they come back on a second key start. So that's something we could verify, or we could just take his word for it so we don't spend too much time fiddling around. What he's done is he's changed the oil filter. He changed both of the solenoids up on top of the head. So you got the intake and exhaust on these 2.4s. They sit right next to each other up there. He's changed both of them, says the screens weren't too dirty on them. But he did get a little dirty putting one in and snapped the bolt off in it. Not a big deal. I haven't looked at it myself. We can verify it, but he says it stays in. But the fact of the matter is, I guess it didn't change anything to help these codes. The car has, let's see what we got for miles here. How do you get to the miles per hour here, Chevy? Let's push this button. We'll push that button again. 144, can't fit in these cars. 148 is the miles on it. First and foremost, I guess when I do something like this, customer's done some work, we're going to trust them. We're going to verify a few things. First thing we're going to verify is service bulletins. Anytime I'm working on a car, I pull codes early and often. Check your bulletins, see if there's something there that's going to, we're not looking for a silver bullet answer, we're just looking for some direction. If GM has a programming update on a specific code, or any manufacturer for that matter, look at that, keep that in the back of your mind, and continue on with your diagnosis. So I don't see any service bulletins. I do find this preliminary bulletin, came out back in February 2015, covers a host of cars with the 2.0, 2.2, and 2.4 in it. Now they're stating that some of these engines that exhibit these two codes that we have can have a slipped reluctor ring on the camshaft. So this is going to be the trigger, the cam trigger, if you will, that goes onto the camshaft, has a little teeth on it, and it triggers the cam sensor to let it know its position. Now, evidently, from what I read here, they're an interference fit. They're not indexed or keyed to the camshaft, so they state if the engine has been hot at some point that this reluctor can actually move. Good information to know. It says, let's see here, it was developed for 06 and newer 2.4 LE5 engines. Other RPOs may vary. Now our engine is what they consider an LE9 engine. Now I read the bulletin and it tells you how to carry out this measurement on the LE5 engine only. And it says if you suspect that yours has moved on any other RPO code engine, any other different 2.4 or 2.0, that you have to compare it to a known good one. And they don't give any of that information. They just tell you to find a car with the same engine, same RPO, and then tear that one apart and compare it. So just something to keep in mind. I'm not going to get too sidetracked on this. We're going to keep motoring. So what do we do next? We've checked bulletins. We got that kind of in the back of our mind about the reluctor wheel possibly being slipped. Now do we just go and tear apart this car and see if that's it? Not really. We're going to keep moving. I looked up code setting criteria. Criteria for both of these codes is exactly the same. ECM is looking at crankshaft sensor. It's looking at both camshaft sensors, intake and exhaust, and it wants to know how they're running in relationship to each other. And it states here, code setting criteria has some criteria that need to be met. Essentially, it says here, if the ECM detects camshaft is greater than 10 degrees advanced or 10 degrees retarded in relationship to the crankshaft, it sets this code. So that's really all we need to know. Now we know what the ECM's looking for. We can go and look for the same thing. Of course, we have to know what good is. So we either have to have a car just like this, or we have to have somebody who's posted a waveform online that we can use and hope that it's, correct. So that's where we're going to go. I'm going to pop the cover off. We're going to just do a little visual inspection, obviously make sure it has oil in it. We're going to look at a little bit of data, and then we're going to check the cam crank waveform. I'm going to look to see if I can find a good one so we know what good is, and then we're going to take it from there. So before we get too far, I want to we're going to verify the customer complaint here. Not that we don't believe them, but what we want to do is we want to clear the codes out of it and make sure it definitely is, a two-trip, two key cycles and the lights on. Now, unfortunately, on a General Motors with the cam phaser codes or any cam timing codes present. So right now I'm gonna show you, we're gonna clear the codes out of it. It's going through that process. Now when these codes are set, it doesn't allow us to use any bidirectional controls. It just, shuts down the test. So sometimes you can clear the codes out and then it gives you that chance. But if it sets, a pending code, or in GM it's gonna say, failed this ignition, failed current. If it sets that code immediately, then well, there's nothing that we can do. All right, so right now there is no codes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fire it up. Well, the car runs good, it sounds good. And then we're gonna refresh it here. We're gonna let it see if it generates any codes. It takes it a few seconds here. And it did. So just by starting it up, you can see we already have, 2 codes present. We'll hit view all. Yeah, 1.6 and 1.7, they set immediately, failed this trip. The light is not on. Let's shut it off here. We'll start it again. No light yet. I'm surprised. Nope, still no light, but we still have those 2 codes. You can get these cars, the Buicks and Chevys, I can never fit in them. And I'm not that big. So still no codes, but it still shows, it still shows these as being failed and it will not clear them. So I believe if we back out here, I'll show you guys. I'll get up here where we can all see. We'll snuggle a little bit. Let's see what we can see. We're gonna go see if there's any useful data. We will find cam data here. There we go, cam actuator data. See if there's anything useful for us. I don't believe there's gonna be because it's gonna have everything shut down. Okay, so it shows intake and exhaust being commanded at 0, which desired 0, 0, 0, variance, all of our data PIDs are at 0. Now, I've never found much useful data here other than when we can command them and we can watch and see if there's any variance from its commanded position. As far as showing that the timing's off, we can't really use the scan tool for that because it's, like I say, there's no useful data here. We'll back out. We'll go to special functions. I doubt we're going to be able to command anything because it has a code generated. So we'll just pick intake cam actuator. Usually it bumps the idle up on the car, if it'll even let us in. Alright, so we're going to be changing the intake cam, output control not allowed, DTC present, of course. Let's just see if we can trick it. We'll try to clear the code with the engine running, but I doubt this will work, especially if this code's generating immediately. I'll wait for it to pop up here. Okay, view codes, clear codes. Yes, we want to clear them. Hopefully this is showing up on your screen good. It takes it a little while to clear the codes out here, but I have a feeling that this is just going to pop right back. Yep, it still has 2 codes in it, so we're not going to be able to do anything. Alright, so that's about all we can do from the driver's seat. Now, unfortunately, I don't have what I'm going to feel comfortable with as a known good. I got a couple. I got one off a Facebook group that I belong to on the Facebook, a waveform exchange that says it's a known good, but it's off an Equinox 2.4 different engine code, and then I found another one on IETN network that shows this exact car, claims to be a known good, but has no other information with it. So we don't know if, was the engine warm, you know, what's the story behind it. Usually the guys will post a little bit there, and there's no channel labels on it to tell us what's intake, what's exhaust as far as the cam relationship goes. And again, we just don't know. So what we'll do in the meantime, while I'm still looking for that, we're going to collect our data, our cam and crank waveform, and we're going to see what it looks like, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll find a known good. All right, so I've gone ahead and pulled up a wire diagram here for us. We can look here. I'll pop it up on your screen. We show the ECM over here. It says connector X2 down there. I've got the exhaust position sensor, crankshaft, and the intake over here. Got them highlighted. I also have the ECM pulled up out of the car. I'll show you that. So these are pretty accessible. The windshield washer neck is removable on these Chevys. It just goes down in here. You pull the little guy out, pull the ECM up and out. And I see connector J2. I assume that's what they're considering X2 there in our diagram. I'm going to pull the cover off from it, see if I can find our wires, make sure our pin numbers match, and then we'll get hooked up to that and at least gather where we're at. So the back comes off these connectors pretty easy. Now I did find our yellow, orange, and green. And what pins do they start out at? 45, 46, and 47. Now I did I did verify it. This last row here at the very bottom is labeled 53. So if we start out 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, and then 53, it starts over. One is on the bottom left side here. So these are super tiny pins. We're gonna try back probing. I've got these little hypodermic back probes I get from AES Wave. We're gonna try this. Now these pins are super tiny and they're very easy to cross. If we were to mix up our cam and crank signal here, let's say we shorted, you know, these two pins together, it's not a huge ordeal. If it's a different spot on the ECM, let's say you just shorted, you know, 12 volt power or something somewhere where it shouldn't be, you can get your butt in a jam. So we're gonna try this. If it doesn't work, we'll just pierce the wire. It's not a huge ordeal. I'm just making sure that I have them going straight in. It looks like they are. So I'm gonna get our scope hooked up on these three signals that I have here, and then we'll see what it looks like. Hopefully we've got a good connection. So the other thing we have to do is we have to unplug our cam solenoids. Now if you're ever collecting cam crank waveforms, you know, stuff to put in your known good library or something that you're going to share with somebody, it's best to have any type of actuating device unplugged. That way there's no chance that the ECM can move the camshafts on us. Even though on our scan data it says it's not doing anything, we don't know if we have, you know, I guess we do in this case, you know, do we have a short to power that's, you know, actuating it? That would generally set a code. But it's best just to remove all variables if you can. You know, these are within our control. Let me get a pair of pliers here. So, rule number one, never trust your scan data, never trust your ECM that it's not doing some tricky, you know, behind the door stuff, you know, advancing the cam and warm the cat up or something, you know, you never know. So we're just gonna get this out of the way. Typically you have to reach underneath these and loosen up the throttle body, but somebody already graciously left that loose for us. I'm going to set that to the side. Now the engine's probably going to run like poo. Whoops. That's not something you want to hear from a brain surgeon. We're going to unplug them. Put our lock back in here so we don't lose that. This connector's broke. So we got all hog wild here. So if we do get the fix, we're gonna have to get this connector. Must be this guy has something with broken connectors. Remember that Kia we just did? Same dealer that sent us this one. Same used car fella anyways. So both of them are unplugged, so we know the ECM's not gonna do anything funky there for us. I am also gonna unplug the mass airflow so the car will run halfway decent. It'll just set a code, because I'm going to leave all this gizmo off here in case we have to do any other further examination. So we'll leave the mass airflow unplugged. We've got both of our actuators unplugged, intake and exhaust. It doesn't mean they're not physically stuck, which they can be, however they're both brand new. But you know what new means, never ever works. Let's gather our data. Hopefully the car is going to start and cooperate with us. Good news, while I was doing this, I did get an email from a friend, Sam, over at Tool Hut USA. He makes some YouTube videos. I'll link his channel here so you know. He sent me an email, says it's a Malibu with known good, chains 2 days old, actuators unplugged. So that's perfect. So we now have a known good. I've got our scope set up the same way as the known good that he sent me. We've got the crankshaft on channel 1. It's going to be our blue trace coming across the screen there. Channel B, it's our red trace, going to be the intake cam, and then the green trace is going to be our exhaust cam. So we've got the Pico running, get it for you up on the screen. Let's start it. Let's see if it's going to cooperate with us. It may start and stall, I'm not sure. May let her get kind of smoothed out here a little bit. Sometimes they don't like running without the mass airflow. Alright, so we see data coming across our screen. Tell you what, let's up our sample right here a little bit. And let it fill a buffer. Want to make sure the idle comes down on the car so we've got really good comparison. It shouldn't change it much, but record 2 full screens, and then we're going to make, hopefully, a call. Alright, good enough. Got lots of data. Let me shut this baby off. So I've gone ahead and opened the file that Sam sent us. It says it's no good off of 2013, chain's a couple days old. Now, when I first looked at it, I told you guys that I wanted to hook my scope up the same way because it's easier to see, color for color. We'll notice that I have them inverted because when I looked at it, I'm like, there's no way. He must have the channel labels wrong. I called him and he said he did. So I've gone ahead and fixed that. So our colors are going to be a little different. Blue's still going to be crank. And we'll look here, and you can see I measured right here, 0 degrees, 720 degrees of crank rotation. And I've done that on both of them. Now our waveform is the one over here on the right side of the screen. You can see these little white boxes. I've taken and pulled them out and measured the rising edge of the intake and the cam, and we can look up here and we can see my first measurement. So it's going to be this one right here to the intake, right? Yes. Let me make sure. I'm sorry, to the exhaust. I got myself confused. Our exhaust cam over on this one here on the left, we measured is 24 degrees. Whoop. We measured 24 degrees. On mine we measured 10, so that's, or 10.5, so we'll just round off. That's about our cam, our exhaust cam, so it's going to be our green trace. Our exhaust cam, if our known good, is about roughly 13.5 degrees advanced, which is weird. And then we look at the intake. Now I've measured this, got this marker here, same spot on the waveform. Ours measures at 102 degrees. We come over here on our known good. It's 114 degrees. So that is approximately 12 degrees advanced. 12 degrees out of the 720, so 12 crankshaft degrees. It's pretty bizarre. Typically when chains fail or stretch, so to speak, or the pins wear in them, they get retarded, they fall behind. Now our waveform is shifted to the left, which is advanced. If they move to the right, you always remember right retarded. Or right, falls behind. Battery's going dead on my laptop. So, I'm gonna check. I've got a couple more waveforms. I want to make sure that, not that I don't trust this one. I'm just gonna check and kind of see how it looks with everything else. Usually, if a camshaft is advanced, it's because somebody's been in there. Now, I looked at this car and I don't see where anybody's been in there touching anything. So I'm going to do a little more digging here, but at this point it looks like that they are both advanced between, past our code setting criteria, past that 10 degrees, anywhere from 12 to, 13.5 degrees. So based on the information we have, our known good versus our car, it is pretty clear by, measuring them out that our camshaft timing is advanced. Our intake and exhaust are both opening early, and in turn that's going to make them close early. I can justify calling the customer now saying, yeah, we've collected data, we see it, we've got the codes, it is within its code setting criteria. At this point, we have to tear the engine down now that we know what we're looking for, and we can see what happened. Has it, mechanically moved? It would be my suggestion with the miles on the car at this point, if we're going to take the timing cover off and the valve cover and all that business, we're going to change everything while we're in there. It's going to get cam, phasers, and guides. You know, you buy the whole kit from GM. They're not too unreasonable to do, and like I said, it would be my suggestion. What I want to do now that we know, you know, we know what we know, is can we look at some in-cylinder pressure data now? I know some of you guys are going to think, you know, we're beating a dead horse here, and don't worry, I'm not charging my customer for this. I just want to collect an in-cylinder waveform. Indeed, if this, let's just look at the exhaust portion. If the exhaust is opening early and closing early, can we see that looking at cylinder pressure? So I've gone ahead and pulled out the #1 spark plug. I put our WPS 500, this is the pressure transducer from Pico. I've got that set in there. Make sure I've got it turned on. Turn this little guy on. Hope it ain't dead. Nope, it's not. All right, we'll get that baby fired up. I've got all the rest of the stuff. I just put it on the 4th channel that Pico will turn this channel on. We're going to do a cranking compression, see what the compression is on the engine. Then we're going to do a running and see if we can see these valve openings, you know, goofed up. So I'll get this popped up on the screen for you. Like I said, we're going to crank it first, and we're just going to let it start. See if we see anything. This is a big weak point of mine. I'm looking forward to going down to TST to take another class on cylinder pressure. It can be super useful if you know what you're doing. So we're going to get some time on the screen here. A couple seconds. All right, let's go crank this baby. Before I get too far, I'm going to go through and save this. Now that it's saved, because if I don't do that, I inadvertently always click the X and have to start over. So what we're going to do, pop this up here for you. We're going to pop back. Of course, I should have set a trigger so it was all in the middle of our screen, but let's just look at our cranking compression. Let's just see where we're at here. So we'll open this up. It does look a little funny to me. Let's set up some cursors. Drag that over there. We'll get it somewhat close. I actually see a problem right offhand. We'll get that one close. Okay, so with our cursor set up here, 0 right here, so this is going to be roughly top dead center of that cylinder, and then 720 degrees, so this is going to be all 4 strokes. It's going to be intake, compression, what would have been power, exhaust, so it's going to be piston going up and down, being dragged up and down through the cylinder. So right here our piston's at top dead center. At 180 degrees, it's bottom dead center, and then it's top dead center again, and then bottom dead center again, and then top dead center. So if you can kind of envision that. And I'm not great at these, but I do see an anomaly right off the bat, and it's right here. So top dead center, bottom dead center, top dead center. We are building pressure right through here. You see this hump? I don't know how many pounds of pressure that is, but that should be the top of the exhaust stroke. And that is approximately 5.3 psi. The only way for that to happen is if our exhaust valve closed early. Based on what I've looked at other weight diagrams too, this exhaust valve opened early and closed early. This is just what we thought we might see. I tell you what, let's get to the running portion. I'm a little bit better with them. So this is where the vehicle started. Oh, I guess another thing to note, let's have a look at something else here, was our cranking compression. We were, what, 177 pounds, almost 180 pounds of compression. So if you're checking this with a compression gauge, you might say, well, yeah, everything looks good. Let's skip ahead here to where the vehicle's actually running. We did a couple throttle snaps with it too. So let's just zoom in on our running waveform. Now this is running at an idle, and this is horrible. And I think we've got all the information that we need. Like I said, we're just kind of doing this for a little extra fun at this point. And this is one way, I think, is probably the only way to prove, or one of the only ways to prove that your cam reluctors haven't moved. If they had moved and our waveform was off, you know, showing advanced, our in-cylinder waveform is still going to look perfect. You know, our cam to crank correlation timing can be way off. We're like, what the heck's going on? We look at in-cylinder and that looks perfect. We can say, well, that's, you know, it's not possible. But look at this. So again, bottom, your top dead center, bottom, we come up to top. So typically your intake valve opens around about the bottom dead center mark, and we can see our exhaust valve opened, you know, right here in this area because it came back up to atmospheric pressure. So let's see where 0 psi is. So right here, you know, this line across here is 0 psi. Intake valve opening is usually right through here. You know, usually this bottom dead center line, the 180 degree mark, usually intersects, you know, that rise for the exhaust. Not always, but it's usually pretty close. And we can see that that is, oh gosh, where did it open? Let's say roughly right there. What's the delta between these two marks? 47 degrees. That's quite a bit. I'd have to have a known good. We'd have to have a known good on this to do, you know, to do some comparison. But that's just something to think about. All right, but the fact of the matter is, bottom dead center at 180, pistons coming back up, and for some reason our valves are closed. Intake and exhaust have to be closed at this point because that is the only way that we can build that kind of pressure in the cylinder. And what is that? That's 29 pounds of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. Now, if this was, let's say for example, if this was a plugged converter, you're going to look at the exhaust waveform here and you would see a very linear, you know, pressure build. You know, if that piston was coming up from 180 degrees to 360 degrees, I would expect to see a, you know, a smooth ramp, not all of a sudden just a, you know, whoop, you know, another little compression hump in here. That tells me that both valves are closed, exhaust and intake. And then clearly at some point here, you know, a little bit after this 360 mark, the intake valve opened and you can see our pressure. Where did our pressure go? Our pressure dropped down. It should be exposed to manifold vacuum at this point. And it is what, minus 9 psi, so we're about 18 inches of vacuum. You can see that right through here. You know, our exhaust valve is closed, our intake valve must have opened because that is the only way. So top, bottom, top, pistons coming back down, they're starting to. Intake valve opened, exposed it to that manifold vacuum. That's going to be the dominant pressure, so that our piston is all the way up at 360 degrees. The intake valve opened, and you know, you can just envision when that intake valve opens, it exposes our pressure transducer to manifold vacuum. It's like I say, it's going to be the dominant source, and it pulls it down to, you know, roughly 18 inches of vacuum. And our piston is all the way down here at the 540 mark, and it's starting to travel back up. And our intake valve did close. I'm not super good at picking them out where they do close. I have to imagine like right about this area, and then our piston goes back up, and our, you know, our cycle starts all over again. It's definitive. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, the valve timing is off in this car, 100% confirmed. So there, hope you're happy. So that's it, folks. Came down here wearing my Sunday best, didn't get our hands dirty. Told Mrs. O I had to run downtown real quick. Then I seen a car in my parking lot and I got sucked in. But now we know. Now I can call the customer on Monday and let them know. And that's it. So if you're wondering where the Jeep hat is and the SMA shirt, that's the story on that. The good news is it's an easy diag, and we can 100% confidently tell this customer there's something going wonky in your cam business. And we don't have to wonder, did that cam reluctor move? You know, did the one on the crankshaft move? You know, what's happened? You know, are we going to tear that cover off and do a bunch of guessing? The answer to that is no, we're not. We have 100% definitive. The timing is advanced, bottom line. What's broke? Well, we don't know. At this point, we still have to get in there and look, but at least when we get it opened up, we can see, you know, we see what we see. Does our, you know, our mechanical, our, you know, our tangible stuff that we can touch, you know, does it agree with what we've seen on the lab scope? I would hate to be in a situation where I pulled these codes and, you know, base it off silver bullet fixes, where everybody says, oh, it needs cam chain. And then you tear it apart and everything is spot on, or you tear it apart and it's got, you know, brand new phasers, brand new chain, and you still have this problem. Using the Pico, or, you know, whatever your lab scope of choice is, you can look and see, you know, is it advanced, is it retarded, is it both cams, is it one cam, and kind of see what's going on there. I do know from a few things I was reading, even on Identifix, guys were making calls on these based on scan data alone. And when we looked at scan data, I don't know about you, but I didn't see anything definitive there. Particularly as soon as this thing codes, everything goes to zero. So your desired, your actual, your cam variance, all those data PIDs are irrelevant. They don't do anything for you. The only way to tell is to actually look at stuff with a scope, look at your cam signal, your crank signal, how do they relate to each other? In this case, we're fortunate enough to have a pressure transducer, so we go in cylinder and we see, does this all match? Does everything coincide with each other? Does it show the valves closing too soon, being advanced? And we could have seen it also if it was the other way. Is it retarded? Are they opening late and closing late? You can see that stuff. So hopefully we get the job. I don't know. This guy does a lot of work himself. He buys these cars at the auction. We usually diagnose them and ship them back. He had us fix the Kia and the Chevy Malibu, which I don't think we have a video on that. And then of course we got this one now, and he's got one more after this. So if I get the job, I'll bring you guys along. It'd probably be good to do a cam chain guide phaser video on a GM24. I'm sure they're pretty popular, so maybe I'll bring you along for that. So make sure you go down there, click subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss it if we do. And leave any of your questions, comments, or criticisms down there. Now I'm also going to put the files that I collected in the description box. I'll put them on a Google Drive. You guys can go down, you can download the Pico software for free. You don't need the scope. I'll put a link to that. You download it, then you can open them same files that I did, manipulate them, check them out, see what you think, and leave any comments on that. So if you're kicking the tires on a Pico scope or a lab scope in general, hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight as to how can this be useful. So that's all I'm going to say. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.